it's a little bit of everything. But basically, I teach in the School of IT. I teach a module called Professional Skills, and I've liaised with Tom for the last couple of years in relation to that course. And it's second year undergraduate students. What level are you at in this module? Are you at different levels?
Second year graphics, mostly.
Okay. So the module that I work with students on, we generally have about 60 students altogether, and it's called Professional Skills, and the students learn research skills, communication skills, and a lot about social media and mobile social media. So there's a little bit of an overlap with what I've seen with what you're doing. One of the areas that seems to be of interest to you and of interest to our students is the whole notion of openness and developing your online presence and digital identity. So, I mean, it's a real interest of mine in terms of learning, teaching, and research. So, I mean, I'm quite prepared to talk about a few things, but what I'd like to know, if anyone's willing to speak there, is maybe you could just catch me up. I have looked a little bit in the Google Plus community at what you've been doing. I've seen some of your profiles, but you might just give me an idea about where you are in the module. And what's ahead for you, like your final piece of work that you're working towards. I'd love to know that. Anybody willing to chat?
Everyone's shy. Oh, okay. I still have to pick up my Behance. I still have to pick up my Behance profile, and I need to redo my brand yourself video and to use the hashtag more.
Okay, I'm having a hard time hearing that.
I was saying that I still need to put up a Behance profile and then link it on my Google Plus community.
Okay.
And I'm redoing my brand yourself video that was made, and I need to use the hashtag more because I've seen that other people use it. Yeah.
Okay. I'm just curious, and all of you are developing profiles. I mean, I've seen some of them, and you're obviously doing work on them. What kinds of online presence were you aware of having before this module, and are you kind of integrating this new work with that older online presence or digital identity, or do you have any sense of that yet?
Well, I went through and Googled my name and found so many old profiles that I went and deleted because they were like when I was a lot younger, and now I'm trying to make everything look more consistent. Yeah.
Okay, that's really interesting. So you'll know, of course, that it's not easy to get rid of stuff there, but the more deliberate you are about creating things, those are the things that'll come up when people search your name, and the old stuff just kind of goes further down the search results.
Yeah.
Yeah. And would that be the case with most people in the class?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. Okay. Well, what I might do maybe is talk. Yes. Okay. Maybe what I'll do then is share a little bit about what the Irish student experience has been, who are at the same level that you're at, and then maybe we could kind of share some stories after that. One of a little bit maybe about my ethos first is I like Tom and Laurent and your other instructors in this course, I'm sure, we do things differently than maybe some of your other instructors do, which is just this whole notion of embracing openness. And we're not happy to teach within the corralled areas within learning management systems, because we feel that it's really important that the work that you're doing while you're students is integrated with the rest of your life, and that you get to interact not just with the people in your class, but with other people like your guest lecturers like myself, but many, many other people who might have the same interests as you. So in my own experience, I would say that I've kind of encountered different levels of openness, and the first way that I understood openness was about things that were free. So if I wanted to take a course online that was open, where the content was freely available, I would think that would be great. And things are available on social media and YouTube and so on. All of that is openly available and free. And I thought, well, that's great. That's me enjoying the fruits of open education. And then further down the road from that, as you start understanding how people make things available and under what terms, my understanding grew about open licensing and open practices. And this may be part of what you're learning in your course as well. Once you start using open resources that people make available, you learn about Creative Commons licensing. And then as you create things, if you decide that you want other people to use them, you will assign Creative Commons licenses to your own work. But it's usually a progression. It's after you've used open resources for a while, and gain an appreciation for the fact that people license their work openly. Then the next step is you licensing your own work openly using Creative Commons licenses. But there's another step even beyond that, beyond free content and beyond open licensing, and that's the whole ethos of openness. And there's a few interesting resources. I could put some links up there for you if you like. Some people that I encounter think that it's quite, it takes quite an amount of hubris to actually put your stuff online and make it open. But Cameron Nealon of Creative Commons says he believes it actually is a form of humility, and I would go along with that as well. Because when you put your stuff out there, you have no idea who's going to use it, or where people are going to use it, or in what way they're going to use it. So you're using open practices, but if you do it with that spirit of openness, you're leaving yourself open to learn from anybody. You could put things out there with a certain intention, and they could be used in a completely different way. Someone could riff off it, remix it, create something totally different. And it's such a way of embracing wonder and learning ourselves. So that's really kind of the level I would say that I'm at the moment. I'm still learning, but that would be my description now about me being not just an open educator, but an open learner all the time. It's kind of embracing that openness as a way of being, or really as an ethos in my work. And I think it's important, because I teach that way, that I share that with my students, because I know that it's quite different to how, the way some of their other lecturers may work. And I'm also aware, in Ireland, I don't know an awful lot about the second level education system in New Zealand, but in Ireland, in the second level education system, it's still very exam oriented. It's very individualistic. There's not a whole lot of opportunities for teamwork. So it takes a little bit of time to undo the way that you've been learning for many, many years, and to embrace these new ways. And I always try and be very, very sensitive to that, I suppose, because it isn't really like flicking a switch. It kind of comes in layers. Your appreciation for learning in this open way, and it is risky, because you can be challenged as well as being lauded for putting your work out there. But the opportunities for learning are just so great. So I don't know if that resonates with any of you. I'd love to know what you think, or that's just a little bit about from my perspective and Irish students' perspective. But I'd love to know, how you've been finding this whole process of being in the open as students.
If you've got any questions for Ethel? I don't know where these noises coming from. It's annoying.
I can hear your voice, Tom. That's all I can hear.
Oh, okay. Yeah, no, we just got some nasty sort of background noise going on here. Not quite sure what it is.
I'll I'll use my earphones here. Maybe that might help.
Okay. So
Is it at your end, do you think? Okay, can you hear me again?
yes, we can. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, that's fine. Do any of the students want to respond or give me any thoughts? So I have no idea if that's in line with the kind of work you've been doing or not.
Bella wants to.
Can she hear me?
Yeah,
Oh, okay. What sort of media do your students use in terms of like Behance or representing themselves online?
Good. Yeah, interesting question. We haven't used Behance.
Okay, sorry, but I'm just playing muting between two laptops.
Okay. Are we sorted?
Yeah.
Okay. I heard the question and then I heard the feedback. We haven't used Behance. And also our academic year is different. Our academic year runs from September to about April, so I'm referring to work that was done in the last academic year. All of the students in the module that I'm on created a Twitter account, and that was for networking and also for creating another element of their digital identity. Interestingly, we talked a lot about digital identity before I asked the students to create their Twitter account. So they did like what you did in Googling themselves. So most of the students elected to create a separate Twitter account for the course, just to use for our module, keeping it separate from their more social Twitter account. Some decided to use the same one. But it's one of the reasons that I like really using Twitter as opposed to Facebook, because it gives students that ability to actually choose a unified social presence or create a new social presence, maybe kind of a playful identity, just to mess around with for the module. They also developed their LinkedIn profiles, not because we use those too much for networking, but we talked about the fact that as second-year students, they will be using their LinkedIn profiles at the end of third year for work placements, at the end of fourth year when they're looking for work. And from their experience with other forms of social media, everybody knows that you use any form of social media in a more sophisticated way as you use it for a while. So rather than just waiting until you need your LinkedIn profile and then creating one, and actually kind of nurturing it and developing it and growing it. So so we used that. A couple of years ago, we used Google+. Before there were Google+ communities, that wasn't so successful. I'm thinking that I'll use Google+ again now that there are Google+ communities. So there's a few of the things that we used. I noticed that you seem to have more activity in your Google+ community than on Twitter. Is that the case?
Yeah.
Okay, just adjusting the other microphone. Yeah, definitely, we got far more activity on Google Plus than on Twitter. But I think that's it's just a case of the students are all in the Google Plus community, and Twitter is pretty new to them as far as a conversation tool goes.
Okay.
You also use a couple of curation tools like Scoop It and SlideShare.
That's right. That's right. What else did we use this year? Yeah, we use Scoop It. I can put up a link to that actually. It's CT231 Student Showcase, which is the name of our module, and that has, I think, 3 years worth of students' presentations in it now, because we just keep adding to it using the CT231 hashtag. I'll just put that in there. When students create profiles on various forms of social media or create any of their work, they usually have the option of sharing it or not. So so some students decided to put their presentations up on SlideShare, and then a few didn't. But I always give students the option, you know, to do that or not. So most have put up their presentations on SlideShare, and then of course you can put those SlideShare presentations on your LinkedIn profile. You know, again, as a way of showcasing your work. Again, I'm not sure what the situation is in New Zealand, but in Ireland and most of my students who are looking for work in the UK and the States, a lot of job applications are done purely through LinkedIn now. So it's getting to be more important for students. As I said, even though it's not a really dynamic way of interacting like Google Plus or Twitter, it's really important kind of for the next few years, you know, if you're thinking about
so
career planning.
Portfolio, CV, that's quite important.
Exactly, and asking for recommendations from people and so on. So, you know, when you've got the kinds of profiles that you're doing and various parts of an online profile, it's fantastic to be able to put those links right up on your LinkedIn profile. Anything that you're proud of, you know, put it up there.
Yeah, and within the context of most of the students here, they're mostly doing graphics design. That's where Behance is quite important because it's very much targeted towards the graphics professional type community. So that's probably the, in some ways, kind of the LinkedIn of, you know, the graphics.
I see, yeah.
Yeah, so a visual domain, that's why we've sort of focused on Behance in this particular paper.
Yes, it's a nice tool. I mean, I hadn't seen it. I'd come across it once or twice, but I looked at a few of the profiles, and it seems like a very nice tool.
Yeah, it's also now owned by Adobe, and you know, so they're putting a fair bit of money into it and developing mobile app, etc.
Yeah.
One interesting thing we just found out is that the mobile app doesn't show video that's hosted on Behance. So, trying to think of ways of making your mobile profile, you know, nice and interactive on Behance is going to be a little bit interesting.
Yes.
Any other questions?
And yeah.
I think from my limited sort of interaction with your students is that there are quite significant cultural differences.
Okay.
Guys here are quite shy, but they're a lot of it they're just new to social media, I think, in a lot of ways, particularly within education. But it was interesting to see how I suppose some of your students sort of reacted to the use of social media within education. Perhaps do you want to talk a little bit about the Google Map experience?
Okay. Yes, definitely.
Irish map.
Yes. Have you done a Google Map like that?
Yeah, we've briefly done one with all the participants with this course. Yes, but not like the Irish one.
The Irish one was very special, Tom.
It was.
Okay, just backtracking for the sake of the students, we did an exercise of putting our profiles on pins on the Google Map, and then Tom very, very kindly put up the steps so that we could look at that on the mobile devices on Wikitude, which I assume you have done as well in your module.
We introduced it to them, yes.
Okay, so so we had a lab. Now again, there were 60+ students in the module that I was teaching, which is an awful lot. And we all crowded into this big lab one day, and we were going through the instructions that Tom had created, and people were creating their pins. And some of the students in all of the 6 faculty involved in our network, our iColab network, which connected 6 different modules, 6 different countries. All of those lecturers had put their pins on. So my pin was on in Ireland, Tom's was on at AUT, Helen Keegan's was on in Salford, and there were other, academic staff in Berlin and Barcelona. So the academic staff were there. Helen's students in Salford, a small group of students, had put their pins on, so they were all around Manchester and Salford in the UK. And then my 60+ students were all supposed to be in Galway. So there was great hilarity going on in some of the corners of the room, and I just thought, oh, this is great. People are having a bit of fun with the map. And after, there were questions and difficulties and so on, and after the students left, I saw the map, and not only had they changed the pins into all different icons of things and put fun information, but they had moved all the pins that were on the map to various places around the globe, most of them in Antarctica, which they thought was absolutely hilarious. I was horrified because my initial reaction was, this is other students' data. You know, this is their profiles that they had created, the students in Manchester and the other academic staff. So I made a phone call and emailed everybody else. Now Tom responded very well. Tom, you thought it was hilarious, I think. And the other academic staff thought it was pretty funny. But what happened was, when I met the students in the next class, we just had a chat about that, and it was a fantastic example of networking and the importance of trust in networks, because we don't make eye contact with each other like we're kind of doing now, but there's an element of cooperation that's involved when we go into networks together. So, you know, I think a lot of the students really appreciated that. Some, I think, still thought it was pretty funny what was done, and we just basically went back to an earlier version of the map, and then the students put their pins in Galway. But we had a pretty good discussion in class after that happened, and I certainly learned a lot, and I think we all did.
Yeah, I think it was just it really highlights, to me particularly, I think that whole idea, like you're saying, around developing trust, and how do you do that in a virtual community and a global community. You know, you put your stuff up on social networks, but there is no relationship there with people who are viewing it, and how do you build trust? So it's a whole new dynamic, it's a whole new world that we're living in, and although we're connected, we haven't necessarily built up, you know, any significant trust and relationships, and how you do that is, I think, quite important. So I think we probably very much appreciate your time, and it's getting pretty late for you. So thank you very much for staying up so late and interacting with our class here.
Thank you very much.
Looking forward to catching up with you next week.
Yeah, thank you, friend.
Yeah, great to see you, Lauren, and best of luck to all you students with the rest of your module, and I'll keep an eye on the Google Plus community and see what you're doing, okay? Lovely to meet you.
Bye.
See you, Catherine.
Bye. Bye-bye. See you next week, Tom.
Yep. Bye.